Hello everyone. So as Brendan said, I did my PhD research in a barrio in Colombia. Um, and as he also said, barrios are not favelas, but there are similarities.
The bit people try to
And I
ignore,
thought
the unpleasant memory
I'd
they
talk a little
try
bit
to
about what I see and how it
and helicopters
portrays the favela in relation to what I saw,
like rich
point out some things,
rolled over. I was a day
um,
sauce for the first time in
and talk a bit
years.
about the political history.
Hangover sent direct from
What
Mother
I think is really interesting about this start is um, both the populatedness of the street. There's people on the street, people hanging out on the street, people kind of spend a lot of time between houses, looking off their balconies, playing in the street. And also the other thing I immediately notice is the range of building materials and textures. And it's something you'll see: corrugated iron, different bricks, concrete, wood. And part of the reason of that is that favelas and barrios are informal settlements. So they're often illegal. They're often on land that wasn't zoned for housing or wasn't zoned for these houses. And so people move there, in the case of Brazil, out of poverty quite often, or because they can't live in other places. And in Colombia, the community I worked in was a very large percentage of people that have been forcibly displaced because of the conflict. So what's interesting about them is that they've built up over time. They're not unique to Latin America. There are slum communities all over the world. Communities like this, if I'm remembering my stats right, in Brazil, it's about 10% of the population live in favelas, in and on the edges of the main cities. A note there as Max goes past the wall with the broken glass on it, which is such a typical feature of a security measure, barrios and favelas. The other thing that's noticeable, particularly even here before Max starts walking, are the electricity wires. So there's, in some places, electricity provided by the local government, but quite often it's stolen, so that there'll be one legal wire that comes through or passes over in some way, and you'll see kind of nests of wires coming off them as houses siphon the electricity.
Or was I just using a messed up situation to indulge myself?
The other thing that is interesting, and I talked over a little bit the exchange with the kid, but the kid coming up to the super obvious gringo foreigner in the and what I think is really worth noting is that these communities are often very much built on trust. Everyone knows everyone, and part of that is because they often have a gang presence, an armed gang presence in some way, which means that foreigners in the community are potentially a danger. And it's also potentially dangerous for foreigners to be there. The community I worked in, I had to be accompanied by someone from the community, and I had to leave by 4 o'clock. You'll notice on the right the big, cheap, easy to get building blocks that you'll see in barrios and favelas all over Latin America. Not quite sure why there's a street party happening, but what about them? All right. Yes. So Brenda just reminded me the reason why the building blocks are interesting is because favelas, barrios are in a constant process of being built. People are constantly arriving to them. People are constantly improving. You can often see houses that have been around longer because they're made of better materials. So the presence of kind of piles of bricks or sheets of metal sitting near a half-finished house is a really common sight. So I really liked that they got that detail. The other thing that's interesting is we've got armed. I'll talk about the armed gang presence first. So as I mentioned, it can be dangerous for foreigners, people who don't belong. In the community I worked in Colombia, which has obviously had a 50-year conflict, The territory of the barrio is fiercely controlled by armed gangs who are associated with the broader players in the armed conflict. Because to control that territory, you can run drugs into the city, you can run guns out into the countryside. So it becomes really important to kind of control that passageway. I can't speak to the specifics of the dynamics of gangs in Brazil. But obviously, you know, it's a space that they can occupy. They definitely give a name to these spaces as dangerous, as spaces of despair, as spaces of delinquency. And I think that's how we often see favela slums in video games and in pop culture. We see them as these places that are inherently dangerous and terrible, the space from which bad things happen, you know, in the good parts of the city. And that's obviously not true. There's many people who live there because they have nowhere else to live, and they're trying to earn an honest living. They're trying to raise their kids. They're trying to, you know, get ahead. So Max has fallen down into the sewer, which we talked about electricity, but talking about service provision, obviously another service that's frequently lacking is sewage and sanitation services, clean water as well. So we're talking about really basic things that people don't have. And I think it's a real contrast to perhaps where Max Payne was several chapters with Brendan in the nightclubs, spending millions of dollars. The other thing I wanted to mention, to note, while Max is standing here in his pit of despair, is that while this place is obviously a dangerous place, while it's drawing on a lot of those kind of issues, not all video games do that. And one that I really like and springs to mind is Paparillo, and the fact that for Quico in Paparillo, the favela he lives in isn't dangerous, but it's his playground. It's a space he's really familiar with, and it's a space that he's safe and that he needs to you know, play in his own life and escape the bad things that are happening. So I think that's a really interesting contrast and a more complex reading of spaces like. If you like reading books, not just playing video games, I'd also really recommend Catherine Boo's Behind the Beautiful Forevers, which is about slum community in India that came out and is fabulous. Right, tourism. The other thing that I was going to mention, and Brendan can walk on from here, is that in the lead up to the World Cup in Brazil, they removed a lot of the favelas, beautification, gentrification, and it's estimated, I remember 20,000 people were evicted,
learned since I've been here.
forcibly kicked out, and their houses were bulldozed to make way for athletes' villages and things like that. And as Max is watching, you know, football, soccer to the Australians listening, is such an integral part of life in Latin America. And so many times you walk past, kids have the ball, they're just playing. And I think there's some really important social political commentary about the bulldozing of places like this. Max Payne said, you know, football's one of the only ways to get out of these places, that they bulldozed them, and that even those houses that were left couldn't, in their dreams, afford tickets to go to the games. So these really complex and competing issues about social justice, progress, development, equality, these are kind of big questions you see here, like beautifully pictured for me while I talk, the barrio against the skyscrapers, right? And that very graphic, literally, representation of inequality and this gulf. Latin America's apparently, you know, having this economic miracle and the way we know that is the booming middle class. But there's still a massive gulf, and most people live either in poverty or in extreme poverty.
Que isso, a coisa mais simples. Vai lá, mostra pra ele. Você escolhe dos três para ele.
Listen to this conversation from
Desculpa, olá. Fala inglês. I'm a little lost. Perdido? Onde estou?
Tá no lugar errado, rapá.
No comprende. I need a phone, a telephone.
Bora.
You don't
Where'd it
understand.
go?
A gente não é centro de informação turística, não, Gri.
Well, they weren't gonna
It says,
help me.
us people aren't a tourist information center, gringo.
American in a place where dumb Americans were less.
I think is a great line, and you see them all walk away. But it also, and talking about the way favelas are engaged with, there are tourist trips you can do. You can hire someone in some of the favelas in places like Rio and Sao
It
Paulo,
looked like there was a bar.
and
up ahead.
go to them
The irony was not lost on me.
and walk through a favela and be a tourist in a favela as a foreigner. There's a good electricity tangle for you, which I personally find pretty offensive and weird. But you know, these complex questions of how do we best help and how much of that money. So lots of things to talk about, lots of things could go on and on about. Enjoy the two different security, both the razor wire and then security. Have I forgotten anything else? No, I think Max Payne does a good job. I think Max Payne does a good job to some extent of demonstrating the complexity, and I really appreciate. I know you're about to start shooting a lot of guys again, but I really appreciate that there is this commitment to showing life and you know, things that are happening and existing. So I really like that about Max Payne, and I really like that they put Max Payne in like the most gringo shirt they can to get him to walk through here, making that contrast really obvious. So thanks for letting me ramble about favelas, Brendan, and I'll pass it over for the shooting.
Great. Thank you, Helen, for giving us that commentary. So we'll move on and start shooting some dudes. But first we wander past this guy again, who you might remember from the nightclub scene. He was the retired cop who, didn't come out and help Max shoot everybody because he's retired. And I mentioned back then how he's this really interesting kind of counter character to Max, like what his life could have been if his family didn't get killed while he was in the force. He's in here, the favelas for a very different reason, to help and to do charity work, as opposed to shoot everyone.
Folk and, well, now we come down twice a year to help inoculate the children of the favelas. Yeah, oh, it's simply wonderful, giving back. Whole family does it. In fact, my little girl's coming in a couple of days.
Aren't you afraid?
I was a cop for 25 years.
I just really like his character. He's just kind of like...
But, I seen things.
Such a kind of nice buffoon, like...
Good, bad.
Clearly Max doesn't really like him or finds him, useless for what Max needs, but, he's just kind of a normal person. He's not completely ruined the way Max is ruined.
All right, well, good luck.
All right, you too. You look like you need it.
And it's the last time you see him in the game as well. I like that Max says good luck to him. Like, I like that kind of friendly, fine.
Life lesson I didn't want.
If you notice on the binder, on the metal cabinets of the background, this is probably reading too much into it, there's like two arrows. There's like the arrow where the dude went his way to his charity, and the arrow where Max is going to shoot people. That's probably not deliberate, but I find that really interesting. Helen just pointed out the satellite for the satellite TV. I assume they don't get normal legal, or they don't get TV legally into such places. Or they group together and pay for it, Helen says. Helen mentioned Max's shirt, which I love. Like, it just really gives that kind of outsider status of him that, even in his attempt to go clean and right things, he's still just an idiot, just not really thinking about things. And he mentioned about himself as well. He's like, what am I doing here? Like, what did I think I was proving? So then you go to this bar, which is some kind of strip club, brothel. I think Max has realized it's not actually a bar at all.
I hoped this classy-looking establishment would have a phone so I could call Passos. Either that or a gun so I could shoot myself and save these kids the bother.
Hey, got a telephone?
Telefone, vai, lá no fundo, ó. Segue em frente.
When you're stuck in a foreign country and you don't know the words for reverse charges, and you're in some lonely skin joint in the middle of some poor slum, having just had every last cent robbed from you, and you call yourself a bodyguard, then you know you're...
You also notice his forehead's all cut up where he got smashed over the head with a gun just before. Like, another way the pain is constantly on his body, which I really like.
If I was going to shoot you, I wouldn't waste a beer.
So this guy you might not recognize because he was only shown in passing earlier in the game, but he was the cop right at the end of the first level who stopped the UFE cops from executing all the bad guys. So now he's appeared out of nowhere to help Max, maybe, or to do something with Max.
Interesting haircut, by the way. Meant to tell you that.
Yeah, well,
Wilson da Silva.
Da Silva, that's his
Very
name.
good to meet you.
nice to meet you, I think.
So this mission's been going for quite a while without us shooting anybody, which is really nice.
You did a great job watching after Rodrigo Branco.
Fuck you.
You were set up.
Bet your ass I was.
Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever seen this guy?
We finally start seeing all the characters and how they might connect.
Yeah, you sure put his gang out of business. But don't worry, those guys...
So we got Serrano, the leader of the gangsters who was in the boat.
I'm interested in.
Neves we saw very briefly, one of the two guys with rocket launchers in the stadium who decided not to shoot down Max's helicopter.
They work for this vigilante group, Crasha Preto.
Yeah, I know him.
Well, they're very popular with right-wing politicians, like Victor Branco. Now, you see, many years ago, he helped clear some villages on a bit of land Rodrigo Branco wanted to develop.
Rodrigo Branco?
Yes, he did some very bad things. Anyway, have you ever seen this guy?
Maybe at the stadium.
I knew you were involved in that business. You know, I wanted to investigate that, but I got an order to blame it on some local street kids instead. Tell me, what happened there?
Nothing. We simply went to hand over some cash to this guy's clowns for a ransom exchange when this guy's clowns jumped us and they shot everybody.
Apart from you and your boy Passos.
That's right. We had to shoot our way out of there.
They let you go.
Which is true because they didn't shoot down the helicopter.
But I know that Victor Branco is involved in all this. I just don't...
This is the first time we get it kind of explicitly told that, you know, Victor Branco is probably the bad guy. The Ufi is the, you know, the other cops.
When I put all these pieces together, and at that moment, someone is gonna come along and put a bullet in my head. Anyway, listen. I think you might want this.
Thank you. I'll need it.
And if it's Fabiana Branco you've come looking for, I think she's up the hill.
So why don't you just go get her?
I don't know. Well, I'm a cop. I mean, I'll fight corruption. I'll stand up to the rich and dumb, but if I go up that hill right now, I'll be dead in 3 minutes or less. Maybe you too, Max.
It's worth noting Max is so when he got a drink, he didn't get alcohol, he just got a soda. It's really nice.
Let's speak. You helped me. And I'm gonna do what I can to help you.
So we finally get a sense that maybe we're going to start getting some answers instead of questions.
What was true and what was just someone else?
It's also worth pointing out, it's almost so obvious it doesn't need to be that this scene kind of continues the game's pretty terrible depiction of women, you know, as either kidnapped victims or sex workers, and nothing else really in between.
Hey, gringo. O que você tá fazendo aí?
No comprende. Leave me alone.
There's a nice moment here where Max gets pissed off. It's always nice when Max actually bursts.
Você tem alguma coisa pra mim? Do you got something for me?
For you? I'll tell you what I got. I got a gun, and if anybody thinks they're gonna take it from me, they'd be dead wrong.
Okay, wait, no, he doesn't say it here. I was thinking of another scene. But he still gets pissed off. Kind of like in the bar in back in New Jersey, he just decides just gets shitty at him and starts killing before they kill him. And you still got the diegetic music of the club music, which is always oh, get off the table. Which is interesting. We don't have that droning music yet. And similarly, earlier when we were walking around the favela, we had non-diegetic music that clearly wasn't by health. It was, you know, street party music and reggaeton. Was it reggaeton, Helen? Not reggaeton, but, you know, clearly much more party-ish music. So yeah, so it's been very different musically, this level, from the previous ones. I don't really think of Max as a shotgun character. Whoop.
I was running the risk of becoming too clear-headed.
There's this optional cutscene that you can easily miss.
No. Relax, soldier.
You find an American who is visiting this establishment.
Oh, jeez, buddy. Am I glad to see you?
He's kind of one of the
Fuck.
favela tourists that Helen mentioned.
I've been coming to this shithole town for the last 5 years. It's like a fucking insane.
Helen says this wasn't the kind of tourism she was talking about, but he's that kind of stereotypical character.
Fuck me. I mean,
You're in a cat house in the slum, pal, doing who knows what.
I'm a businessman, bro. And they were fully legal in this country. I think. And I know how to tip, all right? It ain't my fault.
And Max almost just wants to kill him because he's shitty and hates these people, but
Have a nice
he lets him run away.
Jesus, what a fucking creep.
Says the guy who just killed 20 guys.
And I'd already been thrown out of a party, gone to a strip club, and got into a bar fight. This latest midlife crisis was certainly ticking all the boxes.
Oh, Max. So now you're back in the favelas. You kind of get the nice hills and stuff. Except now, you know, it's back to, you know, finding cover and shooting people very soon.
É o gringo. Ah, não sei. Tô vendo porra nenhuma. A gente desce ou não? Foda-se. Isso aí já era, não vale a pena não. Tá certo. Vamos lá.
It's a really nicely paced chapter.
The fireworks display was clearly in my honor, making sure
Slow walking for really long cutscenes. You know, you have a shootout, then you go back to cutscenes and walking for a little bit. We've gotten a bunch of story exposition. Yeah, we just saw all the civilians run off and leave and
to another
get out of the way.
party. These hoods didn't look like Commando Sombra. Not that I was gonna get picky. This was clearly their turf, and I just shot up their favorite skin joint.
So it seems like Max is just pissed off people that they're not even involved in kidnappings or anything. Perhaps he's just made a mess of things and now he's killing a lot of people. And the music's kind of died back down now. It's not street party music, it's not strip club music. It's back to kind of Max's droney, just killing people thing. it's back to business now. This level also feels much more fragile, I think, than some of the other ones, like all the kind of blocks and tiles and things that Helen pointed out kind of crumble under bullets really quickly, like they're not made of very good material. It just feels less solid than a lot of the other levels of the game. Just these really great kind of horizons as well for cranes and the more official city. I guess Max's garish gringo shirt also probably better fits the color palette quite sincerely here than his suits in the rich areas. Yeah, and then, as Helen just pointed out, you know, the cop said you're in the jungle now, and he's wearing his tropical jungle shirt. So if you watch my Modern Warfare critical Let's Plays, you would have seen that I absolutely hated the favela stages of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. They were just disorientating, but in an annoying way. Like, the enemies would appear on rooftops and in windows, but you know, you just died too many times because you could never figure out where you were being shot from. Similar stuff kind of happens here, I guess, but somehow it feels, you know, easier to keep track of it, and it might just be the pulled back third-person camera, or that Max has more health than you do in Call of Duty, but I don't know. And it also just feels way more lived in, and you know, just such a better looking level than it does in Modern Warfare 2. And we have more good electrical wires there, so even when you start shooting up people, you still have, you know, it's still a very nicely made place. It doesn't stop being a lived-in environment and started just being a battleground. They've actually still really carefully made it, which is nice. So we can see hills a lot more in the background now, with the favelas going up, and now that we're more explicitly going up the hill to try to find her.
Focus. I could hear a woman screaming. I thought I'd found Fabiana, but instead I'd stumbled across some testosterone.
So another woman for him to save.
Punks with guns, killing time the only way they knew how.
Oh yeah, and it's the same guys who,
Exactly it.
you know, stole his stuff earlier.
I recognized the hoods who jumped me earlier. I was trying to decide whether to crash this party or turn back, when my natural grace and finesse made the decision for me.
I really like that Max is a klutz. Like, he's just not good at anything but shooting people. Yeah, so you have these kind of nice cinematic moments where you have to go up really high, and you go past all these people, and then you got to work your way back down on foot. So the more people you kill going up, the less people you have to deal with going down. So this warehouse kind of breaks up for going through the streets thing. Like, you know, you got to go down here and up the other side. So it's probably a good way to break up the environment. And of course, you lose all your weapons when he does those cinematic bits as well. There's very little cover in this area. It's very difficult. If I remember correctly, the checkpoints are pretty annoying here as well. So hopefully I don't mess this up. Not a big fan of the scoped guns. Like that shift to first person is really jarring. But yeah, so as you can see, all that kind of cover of theirs is just falling apart as I shoot it. To go back to what I said earlier. So you get that moment. It's really weird design. This guy with a shotgun kicks open the door behind you while people continue to shoot you there. And if you don't know it's coming, it can really mess you up. Which is probably why you noticed me continuously looking behind me while I was shooting the people across the way, because I knew it would happen eventually. But it's very interesting, because it doesn't wait for you to be heading out the door before he barges in, he just kind of goes for it. So there's no roof here, so it still kind of feels like you're outside a little bit, like doesn't feel completely closed off from the rest of the stage. I assume the woman escapes, I don't think you see her body around. Have no painkillers, so hopefully I don't mess this up. Classy. I know there's somebody still around and I have no medkits. I don't want to mess this up. Right.
One vice at a time.
So now, like, all his kind of throwaway text when he picks up painkillers is more about how he decided to go cold turkey, but he's still going to use painkillers. So one vice at a time he'll deal with getting off.
Before he dumped his stock.
And then suddenly you're back in the favelas, you know, you leave that kind of set piece. It's also worth noting that earlier you were forced to walk back when it was non-violent, and now you can run again. So it was really meant to be a slow walking moment.
These bastards look different, tougher, more capable. They didn't look like Serrano's boys, but I could tell I was moving up the food chain. I hoped Fabiana wasn't going to be served up come feeding time. This was going to be a safe medical detox. There was no need to announce my arrival in that part of town. I'd drawn more than enough attention already.
Right, so I think you can end up shooting up that part if you shoot one of the guards, but it's easy just to let him walk off. Helen just pointed out the water tank on the roof. And there's one to the left as well. More basic. Yeah, no running water, so again, basic, you know, needs. The guy was about to go out and saw a gringo with a gun and decided not to. So like you still have those little glimpses of you know, people still live here. They're all just not coming out because of you. So they know you're coming. It's another shrine to Claudio, which is really interesting.
Soccer had gotten Claudio away from the favela.
So Claudio's the one who died in the nightclub right at the start of that level. We've seen a couple of shrines to him now, which is really interesting. Oh, just for background noise, like you just heard a dog bark. Completely unrelated to the conflict. I don't know where he is. Oh, okay, there's a room there.
They told me the favelas were full of drugs. Giovanna, charity worker and socialite.
Right, so Giovanna, Fabiana's sister, works down here as well. I guess with the same organization as the American guy. That was mentioned back in the nightclub one, where we saved her. Huh? What? How are you alive? So I just really like these stages, these areas in this chapter. Just the attention to detail is just absolutely magnificent. It's like environmental detail is just something that Rockstar are always great at. Like, you know, you look at Grand Theft Auto 4 or 5, just the detail in those cities.